Party politics at its finest. The redistricting war in Texas is now reaching a boiling point. Democrats are being threatened with arrests, and we're only a few days into this. Governor Greg Abbott says no one is beyond the reach of Texas law enforcement. President Trump says Republicans are entitled to 5 more seats. Democrats, of course, disagree with all this. And joining us now is one of those lawmakers who actually fled the state, Democrat State Representative James Talarico. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you're in the middle of a lot of upheaval right here. Now, where exactly are you at right now?
I'm in the state of Illinois, the land of Lincoln, which is appropriate because Abraham Lincoln broke quorum when he was a state senator back in 1840 by jumping out of a window at the Illinois state capitol. Thankfully, I didn't have to jump out of any windows back in Texas, but we are participating in a long American tradition of standing up to bullies, of speaking truth to power, of civil disobedience, of good trouble.
Well, Representative Talarico, Illinois, that's the one point of contention here. You have Donald Trump was asked about Texas redrawing their map, basically calling Texas Democrats at this point hypocrites because of where you are. I want you to take a listen and respond to this on the other side.
A lot of these states, I watched this morning as Democrats are complaining, and they're complaining from states where they've done it, like in Illinois.
And that's a perfectly logical point there. You have Democrats, of course, aren't exactly innocent when it comes to gerrymandering. You're in Illinois, 2020, the 13th congressional district was redrawn in a way that 538 called one of the worst gerrymandering in the country. What is your response to the president?
Well, it's not logical because we're not protesting just regular gerrymandering. Texas Republicans gerrymandered our state in 2021 at the beginning of the decade when they're supposed to redistrict. I voted against that rigged map, but I didn't break quorum. I'm breaking quorum with my colleagues now because Trump asked those same Republicans in Texas to redraw those Texas maps in the middle of the decade to give him 5 more seats so that he doesn't have to face accountability from the voters in the midterm elections because his policies have been so deeply unpopular. That's why this is different. And yes, gerrymandering is a problem in both political parties, in red states and blue states alike. It's wrong in all instances. It's why I've filed a bill in the Texas legislature to create a citizen-led, independent redistricting process so we can get the politics out of redistricting. But again, what's happening in Texas is at a whole nother level because it's at the request of the most powerful man in the country, and it's happening in the middle of the decade. It's kind of like 2 teams coming out of the locker room at halftime, and the team that's ahead says they want to change the rules in the second half to stay ahead. It's cheating, plain and simple, and Texans don't like cheaters.
Well, here's the deal. Since you're in Illinois, you're not able to vote on other issues. And one issue that's very close to a lot of residents in Texas is when it comes to flood relief and other things like that. By leaving the state, by breaking this quorum, do you think you could, and also in other ways, be hurting some of the residents of Texas because you can't vote on some of these other issues?
Well, the one who's hurting the people of Texas is Governor Abbott, because my colleagues and I showed up at the first day of this special legislative session 2 weeks ago, and we begged our Republican colleagues to prioritize flood victims and their families and disaster mitigation, and they refused to do so. In fact, they put those flood relief bills at the end of the agenda after this redistricting power grab, basically as leverage to try to get us to allow them to rig the upcoming 2026 elections. And so this is cynical politics at its worst, using flood victims, using a tragedy to do Donald Trump's bidding, to play politics. It's why people are fed up with politics as usual. And so we have called on Governor Abbott, we've called on our Republican colleagues to prioritize those flood victims. Let's get it done. Let's work across the aisle. Let's not play politics with these families.
Well, what about some harsh rhetoric coming from your side of the aisle? You have Jean Wu, the chair of the Texas House Democratic Caucus, basically called redistricting plan turbocharged racism, according to Reuters. And then you have Governor Greg Abbott, who says that's bogus. We have a small clip from Greg Abbott talking about this and how these districts would be divided up. Let's listen to that.
4 of the 5 districts we're drawing, they're going to be Hispanic districts. They happen to be Hispanic Republican districts.
Now, what is your take on that, especially when you look at the demographics in Texas right now? You have the Texas Tribune saying that in some cases, you're seeing the numbers, where Hispanic Texans are even a larger population than some white Texans. Abbott said it's not about race, but about making it more fair, according to him.
Well, you know, I would say that the maps that they drew in 2021 are their maps. So this criticism of the current maps is a little silly because they're the ones who drew them, and they drew them just a few years ago. And so it's pretty clear what's happening. And Donald Trump has said it on the record, on camera, that they're doing this to get him 5 more seats because he feels like he's entitled to those seats. And I just have a fundamental disagreement with that because no politician is entitled to any seat. These seats don't belong to us. They don't belong to Donald Trump. They belong to the people. And those people in Texas and across the country, they have a God-given right to elect the representatives of their choice in free and fair elections. And it's clear that what they're doing here is diluting the power of the people to be able to hold Donald Trump accountable. And so they're going to draw these districts into crazy shapes to guarantee the outcome they want. And that's cheating, plain and simple. And Texans don't like cheating in sports. We don't like cheating in our personal lives. And we certainly don't like cheating in politics.
Well, we did see what looked like a crazy shape in Illinois. But when it comes to Ken Paxton, they are coming after you when it comes to wanting to arrest some of these Democrats. You have Ken Paxton open the door to getting the FBI involved, saying this right here. And we have a quote from Ken Paxton. "I'm in full support of using every possible method to secure a quorum and hold lawless Democratic lawmakers accountable for abandoning Texas." This is going back to not voting on things, including involving federal authorities and the FBI. How far are you going to take this fight? I mean, at this point, the FBI coming after you, possibly. How far are you going to take this?
Well, it's pretty rich for the most corrupt attorney general in the country to call someone else lawless, especially when we Texas Democrats are using a tool that is protected in our state constitution. Breaking quorum is something we are allowed to do in our state constitution. It's how the minority can check the majority when they overreach, when they attempt to cheat and rig the system in their favor. And so we're going to do what we have to do to protect our constituents and fight for the people of Texas. We're not just fighting for Democrats, we're fighting for independents and Republicans too, because everyone deserves fair maps, fair representation, and fair elections. That's what we're here to do. And I didn't swear an oath to Donald Trump or Greg Abbott or Ken Paxton. I swore an oath to the Constitution, and I swore that oath to God. And I plan on fulfilling that oath regardless of what consequences may come.
But listen, here's the deal, and this is the bottom line. We know that both Republicans and Democrats have used gerrymandering or redistricting to their advantage for decades. This is not new. So what is this belief? You kind of described it a little bit earlier about why it's different in Texas, but we have seen this for decades, this play out with redistricting.
But not in the middle of the decade. Again, this is my issue. If, like a football game, if we agree to rules at the beginning of the game, then we play by those rules. And that's exactly what we did in Texas. They gerrymandered our state in 2021 at the beginning of the decade. I voted against that map. I spoke against that map, but I didn't break quorum, right? Just based on your point that gerrymandering is pretty typical, sadly. I wish it wasn't, but it is. What's unusual here is that it's happening in the middle of the game, in the middle of the decade, and it is at the direct request of the most powerful man in the country. This should be alarming to all of us, not just Democrats, but independents and Republicans too, not just elected officials, but journalists too. We all have to agree that the most powerful politician should be held accountable, should face the voters, and shouldn't be able to rig the next election in his favor. Well,
James Talarico, state representative from Texas, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your position here.
Thank you for having me.